Savitri is a living truth, and the book is an embodiment of this living truth. As the other day we recalled a poem of Aurobindo, Silence is All, in which Aurobindo says, "What of the speech, O speaker? What of the thought, O thinker?" Thought is the wine. Thought is the wine. The word is the beaker. Life is the banquet table. The soul of the sage is the drinker. In a nutshell, in 2 lines, he has revealed how we should approach something like Savitri. It has not been written by the mind. It is a living truth, embodied and expressed with the word as beaker. Just as a beaker carries the wine near to us, in the beaker of the word, Aurobindo brings this wine, this truth, this light, the consciousness of Savitri, so close to us and keeps it on our table. Who can drink this wine? Not the mind in its present state, which is like Dymatsena, blind, fallen from its kingdom of glory and grace. Maybe the heart, but its wings are clipped. It is too small and narrow, cabined in a very small formula of life. It is not wide enough, not supple enough to receive this. But there is in us a key. In Savitri there is a line, always we carry within us, in life's closed hermetic envelope, a magic key to our golden change. This key is the psychic being in us. The soul of the sage is the drinker. If you really wish to drink the wine of Savitri, the Amrit Pan, the best conditions are when our soul is in front, not this blind, not even perhaps this which is full of always turbid passions and emotions, but something still deeper. That's why the mother suggests, be quiet, be quiet. In quietude, this is a chance to speak. When there is so much of noise, we cannot really approach this living truth. In this process, we stand at a crossroads where Ashupati has made a tremendous choice. The choice is that he has received the secret knowledge, he has flung aside ignorance like a veil, no more necessary. And he can, like many great yogis of the past, turn away from life and world into the bliss of nirvana or whatever else. Or he can go ahead with an individual transformation, because already there are signals in Canto 5 of Book 1 where Ashupati begins to experience the descent, the golden influx, the influx of love, light, truth from the upper, higher hemispheres. Yet Ashupati has to make a choice whether his individual yoga is enough, in which case all this may not be necessary, or this yoga must become conterminous with everything around him. Aurobindo and the mother write this in one of their letters, that we had to make this choice. They have both said this separately in a different context, that this choice was to be made, whether we individually go ahead and realize the supramental transformation, or else we carry everything around us together as one body of ascension. That's why Aurobindo says in one of the letters that the ashram is Aurobindo's body. And so she says the choice was spontaneous. It was not going to be an individual transformation, but everything had to be carried together. As new elements kept joining, they were being carried together as representatives. So here we see Ashwapati's ascension through the worlds is an ascension of embodied nature. When Sri Aurobindo says that I use Savitri as a means of ascension, it is not an individual ascension. Savitri in its present form started rather later. He had already ascended. His consciousness could dwell in Par Brahman. In one of his letters, for 18 hours a day he could see how many hours he could dwell. And he was experiencing these descents, right, touching the physical and going back. But the embodied nature, how far that can be carried up and that great truth come down. In this process, Sri Aurobindo reveals to us many, many mysteries which are concealed to our mortal eye. After all, how much do we see? In Savitri again there is a line, the immortal sees not as we vainly see. We are blind men who see, believe that we see. So he is revealing to us those hidden mysteries, and one of those hidden mysteries which is important even in this yoga from a practical point of view is the mystery of the other worlds. Sri Aurobindo says that it is necessary in this yoga, as part of this yoga, to understand the complex play of the cosmic forces. Because this is a yoga of world transformation. And of course, individual transformation is a part of it. So one cannot just take the normal spiritual route of simply being merged in the divine. One must understand that the divine is all, but he has become even what seems to appearances is opposite. That's the beauty of his. And this becoming of the divine into many planes and this ascension can be imaged in various ways. One simple image is, which is more modern, is when we have a bulb. Earlier they used to be switch on and switch off, which were not so accurate in terms of becoming. But now we have those dimmers. So you have the same bulb, as you gradually reduce, turn the switch slowly, the light becomes less and less and less and less. It's the same light and the same bulb. But when it is at its full, you can see many things. We can almost expand this possibility to its zenith. That could there be a bulb where if you keep increasing, it can go to a point where the light is blinding and it blazes and all the objects vanish in that light. If you just take this possibility to its extreme. And equally, if you could dim it to a point where it's imperceptible, it's almost like the objects become ghost-like shadows. This is one way to, of course, all these are mental approximations, but these images are helpful to understand that how the one divine has become all these things. The words used are self-involution, self-absorption, by concentration, condensation. But the essence is that it is the Sachidanand, one and only, who has become all these by a progressive diminution of himself. And therefore, everything in this universe contains something of the other of this absolute. And therefore, everything in its core and essence is divine, if we go to its depth, not on the surface. And therefore, everything in us, in some way or the other, aspires for its absolute. There is a line in Savitri, each part in us aspires for its absolute. And therefore, every part of our being that claims and tugs at our heart and our mind can be fulfilled by the divine if we allow it. So these are momentous conclusions, very of practical importance, that when Sri Aurobindo says nothing has to be really set aside, but everything has to be accepted, taken up. Rejection is of the ego sense and the ignorance, and that part has to be illumined, transformed, fulfilled. It's a long process. So Sri Aurobindo is describing us some of the difficulties that we encounter. One difficulty is that in all these worlds, physical world is not the only world. In all these worlds, there is one particular principle which is predominant and all others are subordinated. Now, matter in material world, everything, the law of evolution is everything is subordinated to matter. It has to change matter to allow to express itself. The stubborn resistance here is offered by matter. But the beauty is that unlike other worlds, Aurobindo has said other worlds are typal worlds. Typal worlds, there is no evolution. Beings of the vital world remain what they are. No counseling, psychotherapy, yoga, anything can change them. Beings of even mental world, they remain what they are. Even gods are limited by their nature. It's their nature to do certain things. They can't help it. We have that vision of even the supreme goddess Kali. She slays and goes on to slay wherever there is ego. You can't stop her. She is unstoppable. Till Shiva himself offers his breast. You can't stop them. This is their nature. It's very high. Gods are driven by a divine impulse, by the breath of the divine. We have in this life, glory and fall of life, the higher life worlds, where he says, one could feel the transcendent breath on the tops of these worlds. They are driven by God's breath. And when they act, these beings don't care. In the three Madonnas, when Savitri encounters Madonna of Might, she says, I care not for virtue or for sin. I heed not the voices of the demons or the gods. I trample upon the red heat of hell and the angry frown of heaven. She doesn't care. She goes on to slay what needs to be slain. That's the way they act. They don't change their nature. Similarly, the demonic worlds don't change themselves. But earth is a field of a grand experiment. And in earth, all these worlds are found inside, and that is why the great mystics have said, in the pind, there is Brahmand. This pind, which is matter, body, within it, the entire cosmos, not just the physical cosmos and its elements. It's very interesting to note that all the elements that are found in the universe, Earth is the only one where all the elements are present. If you go to other, physically also, Mars, Venus, other systems, some element or the other is missing, just physically. You'll find it on Earth, everything in one way or the other. It's very interesting. Even from the subtle energies, all the elements are present in Earth, concealed inside matter. Now they must evolve. And in this evolution, Aurobindo tells us, there are two things which happen. A cry and anguish inside that which is not yet liberated. Matter is imprisoned Godhead. That is the story of Aitri Upanishad. Partly we alluded to yesterday. The story runs further that God say, where should we enter? Give us a form. And the one supreme shows him form of the, all the forms he shows. I don't remember, maybe the form of the donkey and form of the boar and all forms he shows. But they reject. No. Then he's shown the form of man. And the God says, here it is. And they enter into it. And along with it, hunger and death also enter into it. Since then, it's a struggle in matter to liberate these imprisoned gods. Savitri starts with that. It was the hour before the gods awake. So many levels one can understand its meaning. It's much like us. The gods are sleeping inside us. We only have to take it by faith. They are asleep, and every time they awake, there is an anguish felt inside material substance. And this cry, in response to this anguish, something from above comes down and touches matter. And by the shock and the contact of that which comes from above, this which is hidden inside is liberated, and matter is transformed into a new mold. We have the quick description of this process in the very canto we were reading, the glory and the fall of life. At the end, Aurobindo describes to us, this is book 2, canto 3, page 129, the third line from top. Aurobindo describes to us first the scene when life has not come upon earth. It is totally asleep in matter. It's not that matter doesn't have life, it has kinetic energy. But it's not living in the way we understand. It's inanimate. That's how the term comes. But from a deeper point of view, life is involved inside it. So he describes the sleeping material world. There are no trees, no grass, no greenery. There is only sea and mud and mountain which are barren. And how life enters. And this is very, very beautiful because this is the basic process of evolution throughout. In the crude beginnings of this mortal world, life was not, nor mind's play, nor heart's desire. He's taking us back to a pre-era, some maybe 15 billion years back, in the crude beginnings of this mortal world. When earth was built in the unconscious void, probably some 10 billion years back, and nothing was save a material scene, identified with sea and sky and stone, her young gods yearned for the release of souls. In this blind matter, there were imprisoned deities yearning for release, crying for release. We have that story of Michelangelo who made these stones into little beautiful deities, and someone asked him, "How did you know she is there?" He said, "I saw them." So out of stone he carved an image. So there are these gods and goddesses sleeping inside matter. So the vision of India, where it saw God in the sky and the sea and the stone and the mud, is not just primitive ritualistic animism. It is a reality of inner life, but they are imprisoned gods. Her young gods yearn for the release of souls, asleep in objects, vague, inanimate. Even in the most inanimate objects, there is a Godhead. The mother has spoken of how there are beings inside fire who come and actually attack. How there are beings inside the sea. We have the story from the Ramayana that sea is not parting. And ultimately, Rama says, it's too much. It's beyond, this fellow doesn't understand. I have been telling him, requesting him. So he takes up the bow and arrow. Or Lakshmana perhaps says, "You part, otherwise I am going to dry you up." Then the being of the sea appears. Similarly, we have stories where the being of the mountain appears and tells Hanuman, "Please rest a while." And he says, "No, I don't rest till God's work is done." These are not just stories, myths, legends. They are realities of inner life. So Sri Aurobindo is telling us, gods yearn for the release of souls. We have story of Agastya, Vindhyachal coming up and Agastya touching it and Vindhyachal bowing down. Story of Narmada. In India, there are countless stories of gods behind river, mountain and everything. So even in inanimate objects, there are the gods yearning for release. In that desolate grandeur, in that beauty bare, in the deaf stillness, mid the unheeded sounds, heavy was the uncommunicated load. What is the load that matter carries inside itself? Of Godhead in a world that had no needs, for none was there to feel or to receive. It's really true. Stones can feel. There are studies which have been done that water can feel. And if you give it good suggestions, its crystals change. If you give it bad suggestions, its crystals change into another way. It's amazing. In Aurobindo, they have turned it into a dynamized drinking water. If you give suggestions to water, the crystals align themselves. So they are yearning that somebody should respond to us. It's a different matter that even as human beings, we are very careless, all of us. But the point is that they are there wanting somebody to relate with them. This solid mass, which brooked no throb of sense, could not contain their vast creative urge. These gods are inside, and this solid mass, it cannot contain their creative urge. Immersed no more in matter's harmony, the spirit lost its statues repose. So the spirit which is hidden inside matter, there is a painting of the mother, the divine arising in the inconscient, out of the inconscient. Spirit hidden inside matter is wanting to emerge. Like the story of Prahlad and how nursing emerges out of the pillar. So at some point of time, the balance breaks. It is no more asleep. It yearns for the change. And who comes for the change? A few lines below. Okay, we can continue. These are beautiful lines. In the uncaring trance, it groped for sight, passioned for the movements of a conscious heart, famishing for speech and thought and joy and love, in the dumb, insensitive, wheeling day and night, hungered for the beat of yearning and response. The poised in conscience shaken with a touch, the intuitive silence trembling with a name, they cried to life to invade the senseless mold and in brute forms awake divinity. Sri Aurobindo, if you see that triangle of Sri Aurobindo, the ascending triangle, Sri Aurobindo says matter aspires through light, life and love. And the first Godhead which enters matter to awaken aspiration in it is life. So the Godheads are yearning for release and they cry to life. Life is in its celestial home, in its Vaikuntha, in fact beyond Vaikuntha. And she hears the cry and comes running down into matter. Now that is described so beautifully. On the next page, 130, life heard the call and left her native light. She has her home in the wonderful fire. She leaves that home and comes, overflowing from her bright, magnificent plane, on the rigid coil and sprawl of mortal space. Sri Aurobindo describes this in Ishopanishad. It is given in 1/4 of a terse phrase, Matrisva Dadati. It is in him he holds the waters. All the forces of life, the movement of life, where is its origin, where is it held? In him, in the one. The mother speaks of the four great beings, life, light, consciousness, truth, and how they rush into creation and turn into their opposite. So here he is speaking of life. Here too the gracious great-winged angel poured her splendor and her swiftness and her bliss, hoping to fill a fair new world with joy. And what happens as soon as life is born? We have the life of plant and flower and trees. Beauty enters the mortal world, the stone still silence. So Sri Aurobindo describes it with such a remarkable experiential line. As comes a goddess to a mortal's breast and fills his days with her celestial clasp, she stooped to make her home in transient shapes. So the life gods and the life goddesses, the life powers entered into mortal, and suddenly they woke up to sense and quivered with some kind of a joy to be. In the unfeeling vast, in matter's womb, she cast the immortal's fire. In the unfeeling vast, imposed a mystic mask of death and pain. In turn now, in the slow and suffering years, sojourns the winged and wonderful wayfarer, and can no more recall her happier state, but must obey the inert inconscious law. When divine comes down, he says, I'll turn everything into wonder and beauty and bliss. Oh, you are divine, you will turn us to wonder and beauty and bliss? Sri Aurobindo has this line in the God's Labor, we who are waves on time's inconscient sea. You will turn us into divine, we take the challenge. Divine is taking the challenge from the other side, we say we'll take the challenge. And very soon the divine finds himself embroiled in all kinds of problems. Issues of everyday life. I don't have enough butter to eat. I am suffering from, common cold. Please send your grace to cure me. I am not having a table. Can you send me a table? Then there is a lawsuit and another lawsuit, and poor divine is wondering, that I have come to give wonder and beauty and bliss. And here are the children still bothered for material things. So here we have, when life comes down, this challenge is thrown. But must obey the inert inconscious law, insensible foundation of a world in which blind limits are on beauty laid. Thus far and no further. You may be God, fine, but only within limits. Thus far and no further. And sorrow and joy as struggling comrades live. A dim and dreadful muteness fell on her. Abolished was her subtle mighty spirit, and slain her boon of child god happiness, and all her glory into littleness turned, and all her sweetness into a maimed desire. Someone asked once the mother, "Mother, why do you look serious? When do you look serious?" Mother says, "My child, when I have to come down a few rungs below." Why she has to come down a few rungs below? For the work I have come to do. That's why the mother, Aurobindo says, the mother is not all above. Partly she wails and partly unveils. And she has come down here. There are conditions laid by the forces of ignorance. She has to work amidst them. It's not by a miracle wand that let there be supramental light and next day the world was a blazing golden hue. It has to first tackle the inconscient foundations. That's what it is doing now, shaking it to its core. Because eventually it is victor. Life eventually is the victor. But first it must. To feed death with her works is here life's doom. The moment life comes, the angels, if I may say, of death crowd around it. Scientists will tell us, with life death is born. Your first breath of life is also the first breath of death. We say that these many breaths are reduced from your span. The cells are attacked by forces that would bring them down. Right from the moment. In fact, in the womb itself the process starts. To feed death with her works is here life's doom. Till swallowing death, swallowing life, one day the death bursts and from its womb life emerges once again victorious. Because life is immortal, it cannot die. So veiled was her immortality. It's veiled, it doesn't die. That she seemed inflicting consciousness on unconscious things. An episode in an eternal death. A myth of being that must forever cease. Such was the evil mystery of her change. This is in short, the beauty and the enigma of this dangerous, charming, beautiful, smiling world, where whatever power comes down must wrestle with matter. That's why Mother says, nothing changes till matter changes. Salvation is physical. The final victory has to be on matter. One may conquer inwardly. In consciousness, one may even get a glimpse of the new consciousness. But till matter continues to obey the inconscient law, the victory is not final. It will go on and on. This is what she is constantly saying. Because the same process has taken place now in our recent times. Mind of man anguished has cried for the release of the Godheads. The Godheads of the higher worlds. The Godheads of life have been released. Aurobindo has described a process 10 billion years back or 5 billion years back. Then at another level, mind took birth. Mother has spoken of that in the agenda, where she says she remembers how mind came and how the first mental beings were created, and there was a harmonious world almost like paradise. She points out towards Java, Sumatra, which where scientists have now almost located, and how these mental beings came. Now, because of the anguish of the mind, the supramental truth consciousness embodied by them have been brought down, released and embodied upon earth, fixed upon earth. But now again it must struggle with matter and life and mind. That it will be victorious is beyond doubt. It does not depend on our belief and non-beliefs. If life could win over matter, which was more difficult, if mind could win over life, supermind is bound to win. It's just a question of time and trust. So we'll take a break, 10-15 minutes, and start the next canto, The Kingdoms of the Little Life.